Hello, and thank you very much for joining me again. For today's video I've brought you to Stanmore near Bridgnorth. We're going to have a hunt around and see if we can find any remains of RAF Bridgnorth. And a little bit later on in the video I'm going to show you a really interesting link back to Kinver as well. In the meantime, the first and most obvious thing here is the memorial. This was actually originally the chimney of the cookhouse, and it's been restored and converted into a memorial for those who served here during the Second World War and afterwards. RAF Bridgnorth opened in November of 1939. It was actually located at Stanmore, just outside Bridgnorth. However, as there was already an RAF Stanmore Park in Middlesex, they decided to name it RAF Bridgnorth. Interestingly, RAF Bridgnorth never actually had a runway. It was a training station for new recruits, so this is where new RAF recruits received their basic training. Usually took about 8 weeks for the basic training routines. It was designed for around 2,000 recruits and 500 permanent staff, although later I believe there were up to 3,500 trainees and 800 staff on the site. In 1940 there was some spare accommodation at Bridgnorth that was used as a sort of a transit camp for the army personnel returning from the Dunkirk evacuation. They also provided accommodation for some foreign soldiers. There was Dutch soldiers, French soldiers and even Czech soldiers getting returned here. The total number of recruits that passed through RAF Bridgnorth for their basic training, the 8-week basic training, was tens of thousands, but also included some famous names. For example, Des O'Connor and Ronnie Corbett both did their basic RAF training here at Bridgnorth. One of the commanders on the site was Squadron Leader George Johnny Johnson, who was actually one of the aircrew that took part in the Dam Busters raid. In 1941 the station was used for training new recruits to the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, and in 1942 it did some training for elementary air navigation. Other changes took place over the years, but it was basically always a training role. Oh, incidentally, the site also had its own 114-bed hospital, which I believe was also available for use with some of the locals. RAF Bridgnorth was closed down in February of 1963. I believe the buildings were either demolished or removed, and the site has eventually been cleared. And now there's very, very little remains to show that there was ever anything here. Now, when the camp was here, this was all pretty much level and open land. You'll see now it's actually quite densely wooded, and I think, to be honest with you, we're going to struggle to find anything in the way of remains. The camp largely consisted of wooden huts, which of course have all long since gone, and that makes it very hard to see if or to find anything really, but we'll keep on going and I will be able to show you something a little bit later. As I said before, most of the buildings were wooden buildings which are now long gone. I was hoping we might find some foundations or some other brick buildings still remaining, but basically if there is anything, I think it's well and truly hidden in all this undergrowth. In a moment I'm going to go and ask the security guys if they'll let me actually take photos on the industrial estate, because there is something on there which I believe to be part of the original camp. There's a little something here hidden in the woods there, you can see. This looks like this is the foundation of a building, a few bits remaining. 'Cause, 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 'cause Unfortunately I don't know what building it belonged to, but there you go. Now this is Russell Close, which was originally the married officers' quarters, now all private residences. Again, this looks like this could potentially be, or have been, the base of a building just here. This looks like it might have been the hard standing for a building, but without a shovel I'm not going to be able to see that for sure. Well, I have been able to get onto the site, but unfortunately the building in particular that I was after has actually now had a complete new facade put on it. I don't know if there's any of the original remaining behind that, but this used to be the general stores and gymnasium, but sadly for us today it's now totally changed. There you can see one of the old access roads stretching off into the distance there. It's amazing really, isn't it, that in what, a little over 60 years, pretty much every trace of this R.A.F. station has been pretty much eradicated by nature. I think you could spend days wandering around in here trying to find the different relics. I've even got a map to hand, but it's not helping at all. Well, as the sign here is explaining to us, this section here was one of the parade grounds on the old site. There's a couple of photos there of it in use. You can just have a look over this way and you can see what it looks like now. Gives you a good idea really of what is left of the site here now, i.e. pretty much nothing really. So there you are, the sign says that this area here was once where the cinema and the grocery stores were. I'll try and do you a little map to show you where on the overall site that was. The car park here is on what was originally the parade ground for number 2 wing. As you see, it doesn't look anything like a parade ground anymore. This is the Hobbins estate, and this used to be the married airmen's quarters for RAF Bridgnorth. Now another thing that used to be on the Hobbins estate was a Cold War Royal Observer Corps bunker. Unfortunately today my skills must be slipping because I actually can't find it anymore, but I do have a photo that I can show you from when I visited some years ago. I'll give you the dates on the screen of when it opened and when it was formally closed again, but it's quite possible that it has actually been completely demolished now and no longer exists, or it could just be that I can't find it. Right, I'm going to head off to my last location now and show you a genuine relic from RAF Bridgnorth, which is a lot closer to home in Kinver. Right, we're now down in Kinver, and we're down by the scout camp, and just here on the right as you come in, this hut here, the scout hut as we always knew it as, is actually a relic from RAF Bridgnorth. Not 100% sure, but believe it may be one of the airmen's billet huts, but it was actually dismantled and relocated from Bridgnorth, set up back here, and it has been doing sterling service ever since. It's in use frequently, and it's really nice to see an actual genuine relic from RAF Bridgnorth still in use today and being looked after and cared for. I believe that it was Ray Davis, or at least he was one of those involved in actually bringing it back to Kinver and setting it up here for the Scouts. Right, so there you are, that's pretty much all that remains of RAF Bridgnorth. It's now Stanmore Country Park and Stanmore Industrial Estate. Quite pleasant. You could spend a good few hours having an explore around here if you had a picnic with you as well. It'd be quite nice. There's a few benches and chairs to sit on. So that's it for today.
Hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please don't forget to leave me a like and also subscribe to the channel if you can, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Cheers.